Thank you very much for the kind introduction. Good morning, everybody. It's really a great pleasure to be able to come here today to share with you some of my ideas about how e-learning and data science together can actually inspire new research and offer better answer to research questions in social science, as well as promote the quality of teaching and learning in the university. So one of the burning questions that I have been trying to answer is how we can promote student creativity through collaborative learning. And I've been working closely with Dr. Letty Kwan, who is in the audience as well. So today, what I'm going to do is actually to tell you some of the ongoing ideas that Dr. Kwan and I have been working on. If there is any like clear division of work between Dr. Kwan and I, the division of work is quite simple. She did all the work, and I take the credit. So I want to begin by saying that by pointing to a very obvious trend, and that is globalization have increased the level of cultural diversity in the environment we are living in. So this is the data from a recent study carried out by TWC on talent mobility. And what you see in this figure is increased mobility of talents across different continents. And we expect this trend to increase in the future as well. And this is another data slide from the same study. So what they asked in the study is how willing or how desirable it is for the younger people to have a career in which they have the opportunity of having a foreign assignment. And what you see from this figure is that nowadays, our young people actually feel that it is a good thing to have the opportunity to have a foreign assignment in their career. So that means increasingly, we will be working with students from different countries in the same classroom, in the same learning context. And we'll be interacting with teachers from different cultural backgrounds. I'll skip this one. So the next question is, okay, what does this cultural diversity have to do with creativity? And before I answer that question, I want to share with you why I am so interested in creativity and innovation. So this is some data from Google Books and Graham Miller. So for those who are familiar with data sets, you probably know that Google's Books is now offering this online search platform for us to find what are the trends of intellectual curiosity over the years. So what you see here is a search on the books published in simplified Chinese. And this is the data from 1900 all the way to 2008. Of course, I think the data are interpretable only after 1949, okay, when when the Republic of China was established. And the data here tells you how frequently a certain search word appear in the Google Books published in simplified Chinese. So if you look at this data, it tells, okay, I'm sorry for the Chinese characters I use here. So here it refers to intelligence, basically how frequently you will find the word intelligence in the Google Books, in the Chinese books. And you find out that there's an increasing trend here, and this is intelligence and wisdom. So the frequency is higher, and the gap represents the frequency of mentioning of the word wisdom in the books. And this is achievement or success, and you get a higher frequency here. But what is really interesting is this 9. This 9 refers to how frequently words related to creativity and innovation appear in Chinese Google Books. And what you find here is an increasing trend since 1978, when China started its open door policy. If I overlay this figure with another curve after 1978, and that curve tells you what is the GDP per capita in China. you see almost perfect overlap between the two curves. So there could be many different interpretations of the results, okay? The one that I prefer is that creativity is the driver of progress, particularly economic progress in a country. And so if the country makes progress in its economy, people get inspired by the progress and want to know more about the driver of the progress. So that's my interpretation. And of course, you probably have come up with, you may have a different interpretation. Now, let me return to the issue of cultural diversity. So how does cultural diversity present opportunity and obstacles to the development of student creativity in collaborative learning? So the first argument I want to make is that cultural diversity is both a source of inspiration and an impediment of creativity and innovation. Today, I understand this is a talk for the general public, so I'm not going to tell you or present to you the technical details in the studies. I'll just give you a few examples to illustrate this point. So if you're now in Hong Kong, and if you go to Disneyland, you'll find there's design for the yin and yang Mickey Mouse cookies. So what you see here is a hybrid presentation of the Mickey Mouse and the yin and yang symbol. So Mickey Mouse is a symbol of American Disneyland culture, and the yin and yang symbol is a symbol of traditional Chinese culture. You put two symbols together, you come up with something like this, which could be quite creative. And here's another example, which you can actually buy in the store. So this is the Haagen-Dazs mooncake ice cream. Okay, for those who are familiar with Chinese culture, you'll know that mooncake is a favorite dessert during the Moon Festival in Chinese culture. And if you put these Chinese symbols together with a Western product, ice cream, then you get this very innovative products. For those who like fashion, Shanghai Tan is another example of mixing cultures together. Okay, so mixing Chinese fashion with Western style fashion. Now, that is the positive side of culture mixing. And here is another example of culture mixing that create completely opposite effects. So in year 2008, the Starbucks coffee, the Starbucks cafe in the Forbidden City in Beijing was forbidden in the Forbidden City. So, and why is that the case? Okay, if you look at what are the online messages that really trigger this exclusionary reaction. This is a paragraph in the online message that triggered the negative reaction. The Forbidden City is a symbol of China's cultural heritage. Starbucks is a symbol of lower middle class culture in the West. When I taught this material in the US, the students complain a lot about this characterization. They love Starbucks coffee. We need to embrace the world, but we also need to preserve our cultural identity. There's a fine line between globalization and contamination. Please don't interpret this as an act of nationalism. It's just about we Chinese people respecting ourselves. I actually like drinking Starbucks coffee, and I'm just against having one in the Forbidden City. So this happened in 2008, but history tends to repeat itself. So this is what happened a few years ago in Hangzhou, in one of the really sacred Buddhist temple in China. And so what happened is that, Starbucks is going to open a coffee shop near the temple. And then in the Shanghai Daily, they once titles like this, "Culture Debates Get Heated as Starbucks Open Near Temple." And People's Daily online have a title like this, have an article with this title, "Why Can't Starbucks Lie Beside Ningyan Temple?" And there are pictures like this on the internet. Okay. So that tells you something, okay? That tells you something interesting about the effect of cultural diversity and creativity. It could lead to creativity. Cultural diversity could increase creativity. But at the same time, cultural diversity, if it is not managed properly, could also lead to intercultural hostility. Okay? And this is not just a Chinese phenomenon. Remember a few years ago, the debate in New York City about building a mosque near Ground Zero. Okay? And this kind of culture mixing didn't really elicit very favorable reaction from many Americans. So that means, okay, this is a Lerdy slide that summarizes what we find in our findings and research, but I think the general message is that don't take it for granted that cultural diversity will always lead to favorable learning outcomes. It may not, unless it is managed favorably. And we can go beyond national culture and look at functional diversity. Nowadays, we like to talk about interdisciplinary collaboration. We like to talk about interdisciplinary learning. And we try to put students from different disciplinary backgrounds together and hope that they will learn better, they will become more creative. And the answer for that is yes, it may, but sometimes it doesn't. As an example of the efforts that have been launched to promote interdisciplinary learning, NSF in the United States have one workshop to promote interdisciplinary research and education in the graduate school. And they also recognize that, well, this is not something that can be done quite easily. So this is a cartoon, which I like a lot. I am on the verge of a major breakthrough, but I'm also at that point where chemistry leaves off and physics begin. So I have to drop the whole thing. So what does this mean? That means sometimes it's just too difficult for people to really move out of their comfort zone in their own discipline. And when it comes to interdisciplinary collaboration, we sometimes have this, what we call intellectual centrism. We believe that our discipline is the best discipline in the world. And the criteria of validity in our discipline is the only legitimate and valid criteria of validity in the world. And this problem is also recognized by the NSF in the United States. Means this is a very interesting picture that depicts one of the challenges in science and technology development in the United States. So in the United States, you have wonderful universities like MIT doing really cutting-edge research, inspiring the world and educating the world. And you also have like a great company like Google's, like Apple's, who are extremely successful in commercialization. But then in between, you have a valley of death. That means nobody is interested to build the connection between academic research and industry. And there are good reasons for that. And these are some of the variables or some of the factors that have been identified. But one thing that is interesting here is culture. Differences in goals and timeline between science and technology and acquisition management. I'm not going into details about this. We have written quite a bit about this. But what I want to do is to quickly offer my thoughts on how e-learning and data science together can help us solve this problem. So these are the opportunity offers by e-learning. E-learning offers opportunity for collaborative learning across cultures and across disciplines, which I think is really fantastic. If we have a course that is launched online, that's mounted online, and students from all over the world can take the course. And if we can design collaborative activities so that students from different cultural backgrounds and students from different disciplinary backgrounds can work together to accomplish something creative and innovative. This would offer a very interesting opportunity for us to observe their behavior. And we can assess their learning outcomes in terms of the level of creativity and innovation of the work. And more importantly, now we have a way, a platform to track the learning process of the student teams as they develop their innovative product. This is not possible in the past with traditional platform of doing research. But now with all this discussion that is recorded online, we have big data that we can use to really study how a creative idea starts to emerge, develop, and be selected for further development. Now, there could be many different ways of doing that. What I'd like to share with you is some analysis that we have done using the big data to look at something that psychologists, particularly learning psychologists, are very interested in, and that is what kind of questions students tend to ask and at what time. As a preliminary test, we have data collected from Singapore. That was the case because I was in Singapore when the study was conducted. So we collect tricks from the beginning of 2011 to the end of August of the same year. And then we have really a lot of the data that we can use. What we did is we code those tricks in terms of whether or not the tricks actually contain a question. And if it contains a question, what type of question it is. Okay, is it a question about who, when, where, what, or how? And each type of question are getting at different things. And then I'm not going to bother you with the technical details as I mentioned. This is the distribution of the questions across the sample, and this is the distribution of the total distribution of the questions over a week. So what you can see here is that people are more intellectually curious on Tuesday and Wednesday. It's a good thing to have this workshop on Wednesday. Okay. But then it starts to drop on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. You have the record low in the level of intellectual curiosity. And this is somewhat refined data, which tell you how we can actually use this big data to check how people ask questions, what kind of information they would want to get during a week. So again, it tells you that, Tuesday and Wednesday is probably a good time to have a workshop because that is the time when people tend to ask a lot of questions about why, which pertains to meaning. People are constructing meaning on Tuesday and Wednesday, okay? And then they are also asking questions about what, okay, resourcing on Wednesday. And they want to know people on Wednesday. So they ask a lot of who questions. And what is interesting is that people tend to ask the how questions on Monday and Tuesday. How questions about operations and procedures. Where? On Friday and Saturday, I expect that you will ask this question more often. You want to know where to go in the weekend, okay? Now, these are just some indications telling us that this kind of data could be very helpful and very meaningful for researchers to understand how people engage in different forms of information processing over time. Imagine that we have these tools available to me and the data available to us. And now we can track over the course of a project development when creative ideas surface, when creative ideas get selected for further development and elaboration, and what kind of pattern of information processing or search accompany each stage of creative idea development, and how each of these patterns help us predict the final outcome, creative outcomes of the project. Then we will start to have some really in-depth understanding of how creativity develops through collaborative e-learning. And once this knowledge is generated, we can feed forward to course design, telling us how we can design a project in online e-learning that would really increase the level of creativity of our students. So we create a virtuous circle in education. To me, that is the promise of e-learning and big data in combination, not in isolation. Okay? So I probably should end here. If you like the monkey business that I present to you today, perhaps we can have a conversation, and maybe we can work together to come up with something interesting. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Chiu. We are honored to have Professor Rob Miller as our next speaker. Professor Miller is a full professor in the MIT Electrical Engineering and Computer Science EECS department and a member of the Computer Science and Artificial Intelligence Laboratory. He earned bachelor's and master's degrees in computer science from MIT in 1995 and PhD from CMU. He has won an ACM Distinguished Dissertation Honorable Mentioned as NSF Career Award and 6 Best Paper Awards in US and USNIX. He has been Program Co-Chair for US 2010, General Chair for US 2012, Associate Editor of ACM Tochi, Associate Director of MIT CSEL, and Education Co-Officer of MIT EECS. He has won 2 department awards for teaching and was named a MacFaker Faculty Fellow for outstanding contributions to MIT undergraduate education. His research interests lie at the intersection of programming and human-computer interaction, including cloud computing, online education, software development tools, and end-user programming. The title of his talk is Online Education with Learner Sourcing. Professor Rob Miller, please.
Thank you.